All right. So, hello and welcome back to another weekly episode of Hawk Talk. And I'm Beth, for those of you that don't know me.
And I'm Melanie, and this week, in honor of Valentine's Day, we're going to talk about healthy relationships on this week's episode. Whether you're in a long-term relationship or just starting a new relationship, or you're celebrating being single, this Hawk Talk is for you.
And we have a special guest this week with us, Clark Lawson from AMITA Health, Alexian Brothers Behavioral Health Hospital in Hoffman Estates, to help answer some questions about healthy relationships. And so whether you celebrate Valentine's Day or just choose to watch Netflix marathon, we are excited to have Clark with us today.
Yes, Clark, can you first tell us a little bit about yourself and your connection to the topic of healthy relationships?
Sure. So relationships definitely speak to me. I'm actually a marriage and family therapist by trade. At AMITA, I specialize working in our chemical dependency department. So I specialize primarily with addiction medicine and treating individuals with substance use disorders. And relationships actually come up very frequently in our groups. We teach lectures on codependency and interpersonal effectiveness to really assist individuals with being able to gauge and identify what are healthy relationships and traits of unhealthy relationships. So relationships definitely speak to me because we really preach and teach that the connection, the engagement, the understanding is essential as humans because social contacts are essential for connecting with one another. So it definitely hits home for me.
Wonderful. Now, according to the National College Health Assessment data that we collected, 10.5% of Harvard students mentioned that their academic performance has suffered due to intimate relationship issues. Can you talk a little bit about what a healthy relationship would look like?
Absolutely. I think in order to identify what healthy relationships are, an individual has to assess what is working and what is not. So you always have to reflect on the internal relationship that one has. And especially with academic performance suffering due to intimate relationship issues or any other relational issues that occur, I feel that really identifying what a healthy relationship is extremely important. So I think relationship is being able to listen instead of speaking at all times. A healthy relationship is literally reminding yourself of what your best self looks like, what works for you, what doesn't. And it's also about intention. I think it's with relationships, especially in regards to school, the intention is to not do bad, but the intention I think is also misconstrued because I feel that with relationships and society has really kind of sent out a skewed message that you have to be perfect. You could get 5 A's and 1 B, you're still going to focus on that 1 B. And I think that can definitely impair people's relationship outlook and feel like they're not good enough. So I feel in regards to a healthy relationship, we need communication. We need boundaries. We need listening to one another. There's maintaining a mutual understanding and commitment in the relationship. And you also need some conflict as well, because not everything can be perfect. So healthy relationship is also about, fairness and equality in regards to what we want. You need that respect, whether it's for yourself, the mutual respect for one another, being comfortable and being patient with yourself. So I think all those things, when they are thrown out of balance, can definitely impair people's abilities to keep up with daily activities and social, academic, and occupational functions as well.
Yes, Clark, and you said so much good stuff in that. And I think one thing that stood out to me is that no relationship is the same and it's not perfect. And I think that can be a really crucial thing to think about because, and we'll talk probably a little bit more about this later on, is really that social media aspect. A lot of times that perfection piece, it looks like someone has the perfect relationship or the perfect life, but in reality, for a relationship to work well, you have to have some conflict. You kind of have to work through some things, which I think is really key. And so as we talk about relationships, I think it's also important to highlight the fact that it's great to be single as well. Like, you don't have to be in a relationship to be happy and healthy. So can you touch a little bit on some of the positives of both, right? Being in a relationship, but also being single.
I think being single really sets the foundation for finding the relationship that you want to be in, because I feel that society tells us how we should be, and we really fall away from how we want to be. And speaking from personal experience, I liked being single. It wasn't about the single and ready to mingle. had to be able to reframe that context of that statement and realize that what we're mingling with is ourselves. We're getting in touch with ourselves. A lot of the times when people feel like they have to be with someone in order to have this validation and self-worth, it's preposterous, because people really forget about how beautiful they are on the inside, and we tend to lose touch of that. We lose this sense of self. And being single, especially if you're in a relationship, if you break up, you get out of it, and you're like, where do I go next at that point? Being single allows us to really reevaluate what worked, what didn't work, you know, how we should be loved, how we want, you know, really be able to identify our wants and needs. So being single is great. And I feel that society really does put a lot of pressure on people to say, you need to be with somebody in order to have work. I think in order for us to really navigate relationships is to really navigate our own relationship with ourselves and really figure out like what we want, who we are, being comfortable with our skin, and realizing that we shouldn't have to change that just because society says we're supposed to have a six-pack. Well, I failed that test and I still got married, you know. But of course you get in this negative thinking where if you're not with somebody, it's not good. But it is okay, I think, for everybody listening, is that it is okay to be single, because you really get to be in touch with who you are. You find that beauty again. And I think this is a good way for us to really shed some old baggage and make room for new and exciting things. Now, being in a relationship after you've been single, I think we bring to the table a lot more insight and just overall functioning. We recognize how to really navigate things in a more comfortable way, but no relationship is perfect. But I think at least taking from our past experiences, not defining ourselves by them, but bringing them to the present and really evaluating how we can, if we were lacking in communication or asserting a boundary, if it was a problem with attention to detail, especially, you know, not listening, for example, that can be a huge one. But being able to find somebody where you can find that balance and there's that mutual respect. A lot of times relationships these days are one-sided. So I think when we're single, it's being able to know what we want and being able to communicate that to our partner about, this is our experience, this is what we hope to have, so we really can have that mutual gain. So take the time, if you're single, to really enjoy getting in touch with yourself again, because believe me, everybody has something to offer, no matter how many relationships they've had or they haven't had. So
yes, and I think that's so important. It's kind of clarifying your values and what you want to seek in relationship, if you even want a relationship, right? Some people are single their entire lives, and that's great. And thinking about the flip side of that, I think sometimes we think of relationship as sometimes we tend to focus on the negative. Sometimes, yes, there's conflict, but can you maybe touch on a couple of points of like, what are some of the positives of being in relationships and things that we should celebrate if we are choosing to be in a relationship with someone?
I think the positive being in a relationship is just having another person there. Maintaining independence within a relationship is effective as well and is essential. So we don't want to fall into any codependent ruts. A healthy relationship really is about that mutual gain, that fairness and equality. You want to make sure that you have your respect for yourself, because how can we expect to respect anybody else or make this work if we don't have respect for ourselves? So a lot of our core values we take from learning to be single, from society, from others, but it's really how we make sense of it. And being in a relationship, I think it's great for us to be able to be who we are, not be something else, not be this socially constructed, you know, you have to be, look what The Bachelor looks like, or you have to look like a Victoria's Secret, you know, secret model. It's not about that. Is that I think being in a relationship, you really find yourself. That's your eat, pray, love moment, where you really reflect on how you connect with this person, because a relationship is not about the physical intimacy. It's about the emotional connection and intimacy that you have with that person. Because as we see, like how social media really influences Tinder or Bumble, whatever the dating apps may be, is that I think it's great for connecting people. At the same time, I feel that being in a relationship when you're meeting face to face with somebody is that you get to go through your own personality inventory. You get to see what you like, what you don't like. So a relationship is just, it's a book that you don't want to, when it's a good one, it's a book that you don't want to put down, and you can read it over and over and over again. You always take something from it. So being in a relationship is great. Being single is great. It's just people coming to terms with knowing that it's what they want and it's what they need currently in their life. It's not about what other people say, like, oh, you need to be dating, you need to be in a relationship. Or I would hear it all the time from family members, like, you know, you better get on that, otherwise you're going to be single forever. What's wrong with being that? Because at least when you're single and you're in a relationship, you still have a relationship. It's with yourself or it's with somebody else. Both are very positive.
So many good nuggets in there, Clark. I love it. Yes, thank you for that.
No problem.
So Clark, you touched on it a little bit in your last segment about the influence of social media and how they would impact relationships. Could you talk a little bit more about the role of social media on our relationships?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a double-edged sword because social media can be a great way to connect to those we haven't seen in a while, keep in contact with a bunch of people, or meet new people. At the same time, I think it can definitely negatively affect relationships because social media causes us to start comparing ourselves to other people, including your friends, and it's just based on social media accounts. I mean, I see people, I don't know if you all remember MySpace. Long time ago with MySpace, if you got moved like a ranking in your friends list, you had like top 10 friends, and if I move somebody to like number 2, you get this message about like, well, why is this person number 1 and I'm number 2? And you really start to compare yourself. And of course we didn't see it back then because this was, 15, 16 years ago. But at the same time, how Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, everything is so prevalent these days. Everybody really gets caught up on what their social status is. And so some people, I think, with social media, they fear that their lives may not be as good as others, and they can really withdraw from friendships because they feel that they're not good enough. Social media can also provide some sort of evidence-based, research articles about why it's good to have this, what defines healthy and unhealthy traits about social media. But I feel like people are so engaged in social media that we're losing touch of how to connect with others. And I feel that definitely affects relationships because I'll see it with my nephew. He's a teenager. He'll text somebody, or he'll send a Snapchat. He's like, missing you. Hope you're doing well. Or he's like, I'm angry. He'll send me a picture of like when he's angry. And I'm like, why can't you just call me and just do this? And I feel like social media, can often provide some sort of a gag where people really can't talk. And I think that greatly affects the interpersonal relationships, being able to interact and converse with one another. It also, I think, definitely causes some toxic traits as well, because a lot of the times people are avoiding focusing too much on the present. They tend to focus more on the past, especially in regards to like a breakup. People will start to, I'm like, I'll follow this person, I'm going to remove them from social media, and this is, everything's going to be fine. And sometimes people aren't even aware of their online presence versus their presence in the real world. I think it's a lot easier for some people to use this as an avenue to communicate. Some people do better, like when they type things out. Just like I have patients that may not be able to talk about how they're feeling, but when it comes to journaling, they can do very well. I feel like social media can provide that outlet. At the same time, I feel like people really get caught up in venting about problems on social media account, which impacts relationships, and those can come back to haunt you. As we see with like Twitter, somebody posts tweets 10 years ago and it's coming back and it's biting them. It can really haunt you. So in regards to relationship, we always talk about how you want to be able to give that feedback in person when appropriate and when the time is right. Is that avoid sending any messages out if possible, because I feel like everything in social media can definitely be misconstrued. So the idea of a healthy relationship is communication. So you want to be able to fill those gaps by being able to engage with that person, whether it's over the phone or, hey, assuming everybody's doing the social distancing, of course, but even if it's grabbing a coffee and keeping your 6 6 feet distance, you want to make sure that you are engaging. And I feel like social media it's a leech. It really is.
Yes, and I think you said it best, is really that communication piece. And if you don't know, communicate and ask questions, as social media kind of get that mixed up sometimes, not intentionally always, but I think communication is huge. And so that kind of leads me into my next question is, if you are in a relationship and you've been with someone, what are some of those red flag behaviors as it relates to a relationship maybe turning a little bit unhealthy or toxic?
Oh, I think definitely in regards to being present with the person is that if we start to recognize that, I think the partner, your partner is dismissive of your emotions, or, they're too emotionally driven at times, this is where it can start to cause that fear. And when that fear sets in, a lot of the times it's going to be one-sided. A relationship is a two-way road where you have to be able to change over to be able to see one another's views. And I think a lot of the times, especially, we can obviously agree on if there's physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, verbal abuse. I mean, those are all huge red flags, but there's so much that's a very broad, broad category. And to specify it a little bit more is that, if your partner is hitting or it's destroying your things or yelling at you, if there's control aspects where your partner tells you what to do or what to wear, who to hang out with, they constantly are checking up on you using threats and to harm you or themselves. It's to make you do things. Is that once that possession, people are, humans are humans, not possessions. And I feel that in relationships, especially the negative, unhealthy ones, is that when people start to objectify men and women in a relationship, that partnership is really gone, because to control somebody based out of fear is a huge unhealthy trait. And it's not to condemn the other person for having that, because a lot of the times there's usually some undiagnosed mental health that could be possibly going on. Perhaps there could be a huge impairment in their social skills. There could be impairments with their ability to regulate their mood and just proper emotion regulation. But there's other things as well, is that if we can look outside of, a little bit more in depth into the behavioral context, is that if there's cheating going on, that's obviously a red flag that you're not emotionally or physically engaged with that person, or there could be some other underlying context that person has not really described. If you don't feel like you can confide in your partner, if you were to reveal something and you're sensitive about, and you're not sure they'd react respectfully or helpfully, if you don't feel like you're able to have that trust is huge. I mean, bridges will break, they can burn. It depends on the individual to how they want to rebuild it. But if you don't feel like you can confide in your partner, that's a huge aspect that needs to be present to be in a relationship, is trust. It's going to be shaken, it's going to be broken. But if you don't feel like you can confide in your partner, that's a big red flag, as well as especially when you feel lonely when you're together. If there's that emotional disconnect, that could be a warning sign that things are not healthy in regards to communication or boundaries or just overall interaction. Especially, I always bring up this one when it comes to stonewalling. If it's like where you or your partner flat out refuse to talk about important relationship topics or emotions. If somebody's stonewalling, they're like, I'm not going to say anything. We have to be able to have that communication. We have to be able to confide within one another. So if stonewalling's going on, or you're starting to even recognize your own self-worth diminish, if you feel worse about yourself as a person when you started the relationship, you're going to feel less positive in it. You're going to see fewer positive qualities about yourself. So I think that's something we have to take a look into, is that every person's going to have the red flags, but there is help out there. But it also starts with the person, as they have to first identify a problem if they wish to solve it. But those are definitely some unhealthy, one of the many unhealthy warning signs that I typically see with relationships, especially when I counsel others.
And Clark, if an individual were to want to seek help and talk to somebody regarding some of these issues, could you chat a little bit about where they could turn?
Sure, of course. I mean, I'm going to say, obviously, AMITA. I love my organization very much. But Alexian Brothers Behavioral Health Hospital, or our Alexian Brothers Behavioral Health Outpatient Group Practice, offers individuals with individual psychotherapy. We also have, at our other hospital, we have inpatient stabilization, outpatient therapy groups for a variety of ages and conditions. We have residential levels of care. People feel like their anxiety and their depression have escalated too much, and especially with everything going on right now with the current state of affairs, is that we want people to know that there are resources out there. The outpatient group practice can provide individual therapy as well. People can also go to, they can call their insurance company as well to see if they have any outpatient providers for therapeutic services. In regards to, for men and women, if they're experiencing any sort of physical, mental, verbal, sexual abuse, we do have the National Domestic Violence Hotline that we encourage everybody to call, which I think is very beneficial. We have the national resource on domestic violence. And also, if they're not sure whether or not they are in a healthy relationship and feel that they're codependent, we also offer Codependency Anonymous meetings, or CODA meetings. Those are also very good resources to go to, because the only desire is to really be in that healthy relationship. And this is a group of men and women who have really express that their outlook on relationships have not been the healthiest, and they find themselves identifying toxic traits that they wish to process. And they work that through a 12-step program, which it's very beneficial. But I would encourage everybody that if you are looking for any outpatient services, to call Alexian Brothers. We're open 24/7. Our access department's still open, which is great. We provide a plethora of services. So it's just about the individual identifying the change that they see, and as Gandhi said it best, be the change you wish to be in the world. So we encourage everybody to reach out if they are finding themselves identifying with some struggles in their life.
Thank you, Clark. That is so helpful. Not only community resources, but national resources are available. And I would say to any students at Harper, they can also contact counseling services if they're sort of unsure where to start. Counseling services can help them navigate some of those resources, whether it be Alexian Brothers or some additional resources. So thank you so much for providing us with this helpful information. So whether you're in a relationship or you're single, a lot of great content here today. And so we so appreciate you and your insight that you had for us today.
Of course, I appreciate it anytime. So thanks y'all so much for thinking of us.
Thank you.